the recommendations in the 2020 report from the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation, to be moved by the elected member for Georgetown East.
The elected member, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move private member's motion number 7 of 2022-2023, standing in my name, which is a motion on implementing the recommendations on the 2020 report from the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation, which reads as follows. Whereas in June of 2020, the then Member of Parliament for Prospect, Austin Harris, presented a report to the government with recommendations by the Committee on Vehicle Importations and Transportation, and whereas the recommendations sought to help alleviate some causes of traffic problems, including the large numbers of old automobiles being imported monthly, and whereas the COVID pandemic stopped the recommendations in the report from being progressed, and whereas the traffic situation continues to worsen and negatively impact the lives of citizens, be it therefore resolved that government consider as a matter of urgency reviewing the recommendations in the report and publishing a response to the recommendations, setting out which recommendations would be implemented.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second private member's motion number 7 of 2022-2023, implementing the recommendations in the 2020 report from the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation, moved by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and elected member for Georgetown East.
The motion has been moved and seconded and is now open for debate. Does the mover of the motion wish to speak thereto?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at the outset, I crave your indulgence and ask your permission to table the report of the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation in this Honourable House.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ask for members to be provided with a copy.
Madam Speaker, in February 1967, the New Yorker published an essay by philosopher Hannah Arendt entitled Truth and Politics. One of the themes of the essay was that even in free democratic societies, we have developed a habit of turning unwelcome factual truths into matters of opinion. We can see this phenomenon being played out in politics across the world today. Most recently, particularly in the United States, the unwelcome fact that an election has been lost has become a matter of political opinion. Today we are here to discuss traffic solutions, Madam Speaker, a topic that, when discussed, can move from factual truths to opinions at the drop of a hat. I say that, Madam Speaker, because Cayman does have a traffic problem. That statement does not itself qualify as factual truth, but I believe we in this Parliament must accept it as such. Only if we accept that Cayman's traffic problem is real and urgent can we move the debate on how we should solve that problem. And we should seek solutions that have as a genesis some expertise rather than mere opinion. And this is the premise behind my motion before Parliament today. The motion is very straightforward, Madam Speaker. It simply asks the government to pick up and progress the work done by the previous administration to identify and implement potential solutions to Cayman's traffic problems. It takes as a starting point the work done by the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation, established by the last Progressives-led government. That committee, with public and private sector expertise, was ably led by the then Member of Parliament for Prospect, Austin Harris, who presented the committee's work to the government in June 2020. The recommendations were also widely covered in the local media, and I suspect that every member would have some knowledge of the work of the committee and the recommendations. As the motion notes, the Progressives-led government did not take the committee's recommendations further due to the COVID-19 pandemic. First, the work we needed to do to protect the islands from the virus and to mitigate the impacts of the drastic measures that were necessary rightly became the focus of all of us in government. There was little bandwidth available for other problems. Secondly, those anti-COVID measures themselves served temporarily to ease the traffic pressures as lockdowns and other restrictions significantly reduced the need to travel. The problem was therefore less pressing than it had been. This was a ball that we could afford to take our collective eye off of while we dealt with the immediate threat of the virus. However, Madam Speaker, as Cayman's economy has opened up, the traffic problems blighting Grand Cayman have re-emerged. Cruise passenger numbers remain well down from their peak levels, but even without the traffic that those tourists generate, Grand Cayman experiences significant levels of congestion on any given day. The chaos and disruption that was caused by the disastrous failure to plan properly for the Pirates Fest road closures may have thrown the problem into stark relief, but the drudge of the commute has become a daily reality for too many Caymanians. The chaos of Pirates Fest has also illustrated how vulnerable our road network is to any disruption. However, it is more than just the lack of judgment and planning of the current administration that can cause such problems. Road traffic accidents, flooding, storm damage can affect traffic movement significantly. We must now face up to the problems of traffic congestion, and we must find the solutions the country needs. There are, of course, actions already underway that will make a real difference. Across the last two Progressives-led governments, we invested significantly in the nation's key infrastructure, including enhancements to the highway network. However, I will leave it to my colleague from Georgetown North to speak about the work we did on road infrastructure and the importance of that work. But the point is that work on the road network to reduce congestion was begun. You will have noted, Madam Speaker, that my motion does not call on the government to simply implement the 10 key recommendations made by the committee. There are 3 significant reasons why we in the opposition do not think that would be appropriate. First, just as the pandemic held up our progress in considering the implementation of the committee's recommendations, so it also changed the way our economy and society functions. Those changes will have a direct bearing on some of the committee's recommendations. Secondly, some of the recommendations need further refinement and development. Finally, we recognize that some of the recommendations are controversial. The proposed changes need public discussion and debate regarding the design of the proposed solutions. For those reasons, Madam Speaker, my motion calls on the government to consider the committee's recommendations and publish a response to set out which proposals will be implemented. while I do not specify what the actions that government should take, I am clear that action is necessary. Indeed, I am certain that we should all be clear that action is needed. For that reason, the committee's work should be viewed as a matter of urgency if, as I hope, the government will support the motion. Then I hope that in the minister's response, he will indicate the timescale to which he will work. It should be perfectly possible for the government to publish a response to the recommendations by the end of March next year. Because I am not calling for the committee's recommendations to be implemented as they stand, I do not propose to take up Parliament's time going through each of the 10 recommendations in detail. However, Madam Speaker, I want to address what I see as the key principles behind the committee's recommendations. If the increases in road network capacity are seen as measures to increase the supply of available road space, then most of the committee's recommendations are best seen as measures that will reduce or better manage the demand for road space. Before I talk briefly about these, I will mention the one recommendation that was aimed at specifically at the supply side. This recommendation was aimed not at increasing capacity per se, but better utilizing the network's existing capacity. Madam Chairman, Madam Speaker, the committee recommended the introduction of reversible lanes on some of our major commuter routes. These are lanes where traffic may travel in either direction, depending on the time of day, so that more capacity is available for traffic going in a dominant direction. For example, a lane might be used by traffic flowing into Georgetown from the east in the morning and then reversed to be used by vehicles traveling back out again to the east in the evening. This solution has been put in place elsewhere in the world. For example, several commuter routes in Washington, D.C. utilize this approach. And I'm sure we've been in countries, particularly the US, where you see that taking place. We believe that it can be implemented here in Cayman. Madam Speaker, this is one of those recommendations made by the committee that requires more work into its practical application, but it is certainly worthy of consideration. The committee's 9 other recommendations all target the achievement of a reduction in demand in one form or another. Madam Speaker, the most obvious and clear-cut means of doing so is to reduce the number of vehicles on our roads, and that is the objective behind those recommendations by the committee to limit the import of vehicles. The committee's research found that as of January 2020, there were over 75,000 vehicles on the official register, with nearly 45,000 vehicles listed as active. According to the committee's report, the year 2019 saw nearly 2,300 vehicles imported to Cayman, which represents around 464 vehicles every single month of the year. And we know that the issue of high levels of vehicle imports has remained since the committee's report in early 2020. Bucking a clear international trend, even during the period of the pandemic, we saw a steady stream of car imports into Cayman's shores. Data from the Economics and Statistics Office showed that during 2020, the value of vehicle imports did not drop off as it did in many other countries, but instead remained almost identical to the 2019 level. Subsequently, the value of vehicle imports rose to nearly $100 million during 2021, a rise of 26% over the previous year as economic activity returned and pent-up demand was released. However, the most recently available data provided by the ESO show that the value of imported passenger motor vehicles declined by 14.9% in the second quarter of 2022 compared to the same period in 2021. Time will tell, Madam Speaker, but my view is that this appears likely to be a return to the trend line following the 2021 spike, rather than the start of any long-term reversal. And I know the government agrees that this level of imports is at least partially to blame for the traffic problems that bedevil Grand Cayman. In his statement taking responsibility for the traffic chaos that accompanied the Pirates Fest a few weeks ago, Premier was clear that it was not only the actions of the government and their failure to properly plan at the road closures and communicate those and the diversions.
Madam Speaker, point of order, ma'am. Is the leader of opposition saying that it was the government's was responsible for closing of the roads for the Pirates Week Festival? Because it was not us that was responsible for that. That was the police service, so he needs to get that right.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I can only go by what was said. I do know that the Premier got up and he said he took responsibility for it, for what had happened. So, I mean, the Pirates Week activities took place, these road closures took place. I'm only saying what I know and what I've heard with regard to it. So, unless there's anything further, ma'am, I propose just to continue.
Continue.
Madam Speaker, the Premier also said that the government had to get on top of the unrestricted importation of hundreds of cars every month if a proper solution to the problems of congestion is to be found. Madam Speaker, I agree. We all agree. The problem is that he has said this before and then nothing has been done. Right back at the start of this administration, one of the environmental initiatives that the Premier announced that his new ministry would take would be to reduce the number of second-hand cars imported, particularly from Japan. But to date, it seems quite obvious to us that nothing has been done to deliver on that objective. Of course, we've heard too from the Minister of Finance, who has recently published the second quarter results. He spoke of the higher than expected revenues achieved, which included motor vehicle charges that were $5.3 million greater than budgeted due to the high volume of vehicle imports. And so we see somewhat of a contradiction here between what is saying that the ministry is saying with regard to the continuing increases and of import duties.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. I'm just trying to ascertain from the Honourable Leader of Opposition, when did I state that in this Honourable House? What date and when I said that? I'm just curious. Thank you.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I don't think I said that he published or stated that in this Honourable House. I said when he published the second quarter financial results. When he published the government's second quarter financial results, I'll read it from the Deputy Premier trumpeted the higher than expected revenues achieved, which included motor vehicle charges that were $5.3 million greater than budgeted due to the high volume of vehicle imports. Madam Speaker, this highlights the fact that we need to bring focus.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the Deputy Premier is asking if you can clarify what report you're quoting him from.
The second quarter report and the statements that were released. Okay?
You may continue.
Madam Speaker, this highlights the fact that we need to bring focus and clarity to the government's thinking. By seeking an urgent, formal response to the committee's recommendations, we are giving PAC the opportunity once and for all to tell us whether they are serious about limiting car imports or not. And if they are serious, what do they propose to do about it? While I believe limiting imports is an important step, it is not in itself the answer to our problems. First, even though we are importing cars at a seemingly extraordinary rate, reducing the rate will only have a marginal impact on the total number of vehicles on our roads for the foreseeable future. With tens of thousands of vehicles already here, reducing the rate of imports will only put a relatively small dent on the numbers on our roads. Secondly, we need to beware of unintended consequences. If we limit imports, we may simply mean that older vehicles, which are less fuel efficient, less safe, and more polluting, will stay on our roads for longer than they otherwise might or would. Any action taken to limit imports must avoid such adverse impacts, or it could prove to be counterproductive. Limiting imports will make less of an impact than changing the way people make their travel choices. The committee's recommendations address that issue in several respects. They suggest ways in which people might reduce the need for travel in these post-pandemic times. I think we have all recognized that it is possible for more people to work from home, or at least for part of the time. Simply put, if a regular office worker opts to work from home 1 day per week, that reduces their commute by 20%. Similarly, meetings held virtually rather than face-to-face mean that staff do not need to travel to the same location and back again. Car sharing or pooling arrangements also reduce the demand for road space. I do not know of research specifically in Cayman, but pre-pandemic, the Census Bureau in the United States found that some 3/4 of Americans drive alone to work every day. Only 9% carpool with someone else. If Cayman's figures are in any way similar, and I firmly believe that they are, the scope to get significant numbers of cars off our roads and to significantly reduce peak congestion through car sharing schemes is obvious. More use of school buses would eliminate those journeys that are made simply to take children to school. Members will know of parents who take their car each morning just to get their children to school. We only have to see the reduced congestion during the school holidays to understand the impacts of these journeys. Reducing home-to-school car use would therefore have a potentially significant impact on reducing peak loads on Cayman's overstretched road network. The committee also made other recommendations that would impact peak loading, such as staggered school start times and staggered or flexible working arrangements. The traffic is only really congested during peak hours. And while the committee's recommendations will need some careful planning, anything which can reduce or spread the loads that the network currently experiences during those hours would be welcome. And I think I have demonstrated clearly that each of those has a role to play. Finally, and most importantly, the committee recommended the introduction of improved public transport arrangements for Grand Cayman. In a sense, the government has already responded to this recommendation, as I am aware that the Minister has recently announced the tendering of a significant consultancy contract to look at the future public transport system for the island. But what puzzles me, Madam Speaker, is why is it only now that such a consultancy contract has been undertaken? When we were in government, the Progressives committed to an overhaul of public transport to be led by a thorough appraisal of the options which would identify the best solution and how it might best be implemented. We know, because we led it, that the work had been done to commission the necessary review before the last election. Again, my colleague, the Deputy Opposition Leader, will speak more about it. An RFP for a public transport review was complete and ready to go out. Madam Speaker, I said at the start of my speech that we need to accept that Cayman has a traffic problem. As is clear from what I've said today, it is a complex problem, and there is no single silver bullet solution that will resolve the problem.
Madam Speaker, I
Member for
I
Georgetown
rise in
Central.
a point of order of elucidation, and if the member give way, this one give way for clarity. Yeah.
Madam Speaker, as is clear from what I've said today, it is a complex problem, and there is no single silver bullet solution that's going to resolve the problem. It's going to take a multifaceted approach to it. What we do know, however, is that continued failure to take any action at all will simply make the matter worse. The recommendations made by the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation are not a panacea either. But, Madam Speaker, they are a good starting point from which a comprehensive solution could be designed. And therefore urging the government to accept and support this motion and to commit to responding urgently on all 10 of the committee's recommendations. And, Madam Speaker, I thank you for allowing me to present this motion today.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, does the mover wish to exercise his right of reply?
Madam Speaker,
I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
I'm sure from what I heard that the minister wanted to reply, but he had to step out a minute. Maybe he could give the minister a chance to get back in, if that's the case. But Madam Speaker, okay. Yeah, we're going to do so.
The Honourable Minister for Tourism and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't intending to speak to this motion. Madam Speaker, I'm not sure. Madam Speaker, I wasn't intending to speak on this topic, but I could not help but to recognize the storytelling approach that the opposition has approached all their motions yet again out of their opening speeches. It seems like every speech is one of fairy tales and quotes and all kinds of other stuff for emphasis, which is good. That's opposition style of politics. I was there, so I understand. And I'm going to try my endeavor best not to be too controversial or conflicting with the opposition on this, because I think what I would at least like to think that the hope of the opposition is to find a solution to something that is troubling our people. I want to believe that. But in the midst of it is a whole lot of politics. And when I hear deliveries of genuine attempts to help resolve a problem, I'll accept it. But when there's the little jab comments is what forces me to get to my seat. And as the good minister from Cayman, the Honorable Juliana Corner tells me, Ken, stay patient. But these are the types of times when Anna called me to my feet. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Leader of Opposition talked about factual truths and opinion. Madam Speaker, let's talk about factual truths and opinion. The factual truth is the members on the opposite side of me had 8 years, 96 months. Traffic didn't just sneak up on us. Madam Speaker, some of the excuses that I heard as to why they didn't follow through with the recommendations were that COVID came around. I guess you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Or maybe it could be because the opposition leader said that we should respond to all 10 recommendations, but in the first part of his statement he said only take 3. I'm not sure what he's saying. I was trying to get some clarity on it just so I don't call him out, but he wouldn't give way, and I respected the will of the standing orders. Madam Speaker, you also said that you used the excuse that COVID came and that's why they couldn't do the recommendations, but yet still accused my ministry as to why the late start for the report with the Deloitte & Touche, which he recognized just now, has been started. But they forgot that we had to do the harder part of COVID, which is opening this country. So we didn't have to deal with that part too? Madam Speaker, that's what I'm saying. The politics about a serious issue. Granted, the motion, I believe, intends to get us to put full attention on traffic. We're all recognized that the Honorable Premier made a public statement saying we see the issue. But the opposition leader, Madam Speaker, also recognizes that this issue didn't just happen the other day. Madam Speaker, he talks about scattered school times. What happens if a parent has 2 kids going to 2 different schools? You don't think, matter of fact, Madam Speaker, I am certain that that option has been discussed, because I heard us talk about it in this Parliament in the last administration. So I know there's been discussions about that. Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is, and let me just highlight one other point before I get to that. Madam Speaker, I'm glad that he recognized simply stopping the importation of vehicles won't stop traffic tomorrow. If we stop every single car from coming in this country for a full year, the cars that are here are going to still be here. The truth is, over the many, many decades in this country, we failed to plan 8 years upon which the list opposition group were in charge. The truth is, Madam Speaker, we had the opportunity to put in a public transportation system upon which they said, oh, they had the RFP waiting. Why didn't they issue it? Why did they wait till I come to be the Minister for Public Transport to issue it? Because of COVID? Come on, man. Well, the truth is, the RFP has been issued, and I know they have been contacted to give their input.
And I made sure that the Deloitte's report said, go and talk to the opposition. We're all in this problem together. I want to hear their views so they can give their input. But they won't talk about that. We recognize there is a problem. But the truth of the matter is, Madam Speaker, it's not a fault of only the opposition or the current government, but past administrators too, who went forward thinking of developing everything on the western side of this island. I'm going to give credit to the former premier on one thing. And I think that 10, 20 years from now, he's going to get a lot of credit for it. Because that school that was built in the eastern districts was to accommodate the transition and not everything being happening on this side of the island. In order to reduce the percentage of people coming towards town every single day, you have to make sure that their jobs that they're going to is closer to the other side of the island. And Madam Speaker, the only way we can do that is diversify the job market, to put them on the opposite side of the island so not everybody's going in one direction in the morning. So we have schools in the eastern district. We got supermarkets in the eastern districts. We got homes in the eastern districts. But yet still every single day, they got to get in their car and come to town to work. What we need to do is start, and we are already starting to talk about it within government. But we only 1 year and a half old on a hard 8 years. So give us a break. What we need to start doing is now moving some major departments of civil servants, because the civil service is the largest employer in this country, and move them towards the east. So those many good, hard-working civil servants don't have to come down. Because you got schools up there, you got houses up there, you got supermarkets up there, you got health facilities up there, so they don't have to come this way. That's what we need to start talking about. What they should be doing is supporting us in respect to our want and our will to do the East-West Arterial. Why didn't you get up and say, on behalf of the opposition, you support the government's movement straight into Frank Sound? Get up and say that.
8 years, nothing.
Well, you stop too much. Stop with the red lights. Madam Speaker, we want to deal with the transport problem. As the Minister for the Transport Unit, I spoke to my members. I said, the first key domino that has to fall in order for us to truly tackle this problem is public transportation. And I think the opposition member knows this, because before you can make any moves that can have negative effects, which he acknowledged could potentially happen, you have to make sure you have a strong, reliable, efficient, and cost-effective public transportation system. And that's what we're trying to do. The government has already said, as the Minister for the Public Transport, get the report done, let's look at the recommendations, we'll put the funding necessary to get one in place. Because after we do that, then we can say, okay, I'm sorry, but we're going to put some restrictions on driving. Because you don't have an excuse anymore that you don't have something reliable to get to and from work, school, or play. But at this point, if we were to restrict hypothetically, because I've heard members of the opposition say this, that they want the work permit holders not to have a driver's license. I wonder when Chamber of Commerce starts saying that they can't get their workers to work and the economy starts to go down, how they're going to respond to that. That's why some of these things haven't been implemented. You don't think we want to? We have more non-Caymanians here in this country than we have Caymanians. If it was only Caymanians driving on these roads, then we wouldn't have a problem. But we can't operate just by feelings. I thought the opposition would at least give us the credibility and the time for the Deloitte's report to come back to see what the recommendations are. Not just some recommendations by the former member for Prospect. Every one of these recommendations are here. I hate to say it, not trying to undermine it, but are things that everybody has talked about and discussed, but they do not deal with the biggest issue, which is the public transportation system and roads. I hope that the opposition members are going to be willing to support the Honorable Minister for Roads when he comes down here for Finance Committee and say, I need to spend more money to acquire the lands that he did not acquire for him to put the road through from Eastern Avenue to the Waterfront Road. The one that took 4 years of planning and still couldn't get done because they didn't want to buy the land when they were supposed to buy it. So when he come here and say, hey, I want $10 million so I can make the road easier so downtown don't get locked up, I hope they don't bring up no questions when he does that, because I'm going to remind this Honorable House, they can't pick and choose when they want to beat up and talk about factual truths and opinions. Stop playing politics. We want to stop driving in traffic. I don't want to drive in it either. Madam Speaker, we are trying to take a comprehensive approach to this. We will do the report, try to deal with the public transportation. We're devising a plan to work with the Honorable Deputy Governor on different agencies that can go east, so not as many people are working this way. We're also working on strategies to incentivize businesses. Stop building on the western side of the island. Create some jobs over there so many people are not coming this direction. But these things don't all happen overnight. We know this. Is it because it's just a political win? Because we had a major roadblock the other day for you to get up and say, oh, we got something to beat them up on now? Is that what this is? Exactly, every Pirates Week it happens. Come on, man. So we're going to be honest about the way we deal with politics. I tell the Deloitte organization, please go talk to the opposition. I don't want this to be a political football where only this government has the opinion and the viewpoint. I said to them, I directed them, go to the opposition leader, speak to them, make sure you speak to the former Minister for Roads and ask him his opinion so we all can have something to digest together. That's not politics. That's trying to make sure all viewpoints are thought of. You see what they're doing? Playing politics. They know that this is a problem. It was a problem when they had it too. Yeah, Arden wasn't so bad, you know. Arden helped your roads too when you were in government. Madam Speaker, I didn't want this to be political. And I know I hear the Honourable Member for Red Bay laughing at me. He's been doing that for me for over 5.5 years, but that's okay. The Lord knows what He is doing. Madam Speaker, the government is committed to working on all ideas and strategies. Are they coming in the most timely way? Not to everybody's liking. But I want us all to remember too, we have a limited budget. If we come to this honorable house, God forbid, if we don't have a surplus, those members over there will be the first ones to say that my deputy premier isn't controlling the country's finances. I wish that he would allow us to spend some more money so we can address some of these problems in a financial way. But we have to manage the budget too. We're not sure that the country hasn't stabilized itself by way of trends within the financial services or planning or tourism. We're just starting to get ourselves back on our feet. So some decisions that we would like to make, God forbid we had one little hurricane, if we didn't have a little $20 million in the bank to help around in the community, if something goes wrong, we'd be in trouble. And if we have a deficit, oh, they will have a field day with it. So they cannot have their cake and eat it too. You know what I want them to do? I want them to say that they're going to support $30 million towards trying to resolve the problem. And when I come to Finance Committee in the next budget and I say I need X amount of money for buses, to implement a proper transportation system. I want to hear them criticize that too. Because I'm going to remind them of today. What today is? The 8th day of December 2022. So, Madam Speaker, I just asked this Honorable House for something as serious as traffic. They could have reached out to the Honorable Minister because I know they know him well. The Honorable Minister for Roads is probably the most lenient member over here to work with the opposition. Why didn't they just call him? They always talk about, oh, he did a road for me, he did a road for me. Oh, nice, 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 nice. What, you want to come beat him up for now? And I couldn't call him and talk to him one away and say, Minister, is there something we can do to help? Can we meet together, whatever else? We're willing to do that. We're not like past administrations. We're willing to listen. We don't pretend like we know everything. I just said earlier today in this Honorable House, I'm willing to listen with the former Minister for Tourism because I'm certain he didn't just grow them gray hairs yesterday. He earned them. Come on, man. Stop playing the politics, please, Madam Speaker. That's all I'm asking of the members. Let's work together if we potentially can. Be mature about it. We want to solve the problem too. We got things happening in the background that we can say, listen, this is what we're doing. Expect this in the next couple of months or the next year. This is where we're going to be. That's it. Stop playing politics because you're going to get called out. Remember, you were there for 8 years. We've been here a year and a half. Let's not forget that because I'm going to keep on reminding you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I'd just like to take a brief suspension for 15 minutes. I ask that you just stay close to your seats. We'll resume in 15 minutes. believe where we stopped, members were speaking to the motion. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable Minister for Planning and Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker, just to follow back up on this motion that was bringing here, I think the motion that was brought, Madam Speaker, I think the motion is a little premature at this juncture. Realizing that the opposition had their opportunity to provide the solutions during their term of office. Madam Speaker, while I recognize the previous administration efforts to address the issues of car importation, the Park government is of the view that that is only a one side of the problem. However, Madam Speaker, we are looking at a holistic approach, not just in isolation. Madam Speaker, earlier this year, as my colleague, the Minister of Transport or Tourism and Transport, engaged with a consultant to look into public transport. Madam Speaker, this approach is the way that we have to look at this holistic. It is not just banning of cars, it is also making sure that we have the right public transportation system in so that our people can, at least my people in our side, in the eastern districts too, can get to Georgetown at any time that they feel like, and they will be more willing to take the bus if we had an on-time service that would be there right on the clock. In other words, we cannot just think of limiting the vehicle importation and ownership without addressing the issues of public transportation. That is giving people access to alternative means of transport, such as the public transportation, as we highlighted earlier. Madam Speaker, the Leader of Opposition said that there's 3 points in the report that we should take. Is that correct, sir? But Madam Speaker, what he didn't do is list the 3 points that he's suggesting that we should have been taking. Why didn't he just come out and say which ones that he recommend? Madam Speaker, the recommendation from the opposition leader said that the report needs more work to it, more consultation to it. So, Madam Speaker, if he realizes that it needs that, why did he come with the report today to say that we should be looking at this here now? Madam Speaker, it is foolhardy to consider just the one-sided of issues. This government is looking at the challenges surrounding the traffic congestion in the plan to table these recommendations to this honorable House in the first quarter. Madam Speaker, my team in PAI has been working very hard, diligently, on making sure that this report is ready to come to this honorable House here. And we realize that we have to do a lot of consultation with it. That's why we are taking our time with it. We realize that the traffic flow is a problem. I don't think anybody else in this room realizes how much the traffic flow is than me. Every single morning, I am have to up by 4:30 if I want to be in this building by 7. So I don't need nobody on that side of the road to come tell me about the traffic flow problems. We live in it. But then, as my colleague also spoke about, what they should have come out and said and talked about is that they fully support us with the East-West arterial. And I'm hoping that they are, because the deputy opposition leader was the one that put up that nice, beautiful sign in Newland saying, "Coming soon." So, I agree with you, Sir Alden, but it was under your watch too, sir. So you let us, the people down in Eastern District, down, because obviously the traffic flow problem wasn't a problem to you back then when you were the premier over here. Oh, we won't blame that one on you. We won't blame that one on you. There's plenty more things we can blame on you, but not today. So don't come and tell us now about the traffic flow problem because you knew about it back then. But what did you do about it? I am going to do something about it now. We are going to do something about it. We're not just going to put up the sign. We are going to try to complete the road to carry through and fix the bottlenecks that you should have been dealing with from day one. That's true. Everybody in this house will get the chance, sir. But I don't want people to come out and mislead the public and think that I am not, or the government over here is not taking the traffic flow problem very seriously. We know what our people go through coming from the eastern side of the island. We realize not only just the eastern side, but we're starting to realize it's starting to become a traffic flow problem going back to the western side of the island too. We realize there are many roads in Georgetown that we have to do. We know that we have to look at the importation of banning of certain vehicles and cars coming in. We know the problems. We just want to make sure that when we bring the solution, it is the right solution for the country. It's not a halfway approach solution. And not only that, but the people themselves will have the opportunity to voice and be a part of what that solution should be. Madam Speaker, I don't think I really have to go too deep into this because I think this is something that affects all of us. And I'm sure a lot of people here is going to want to have their say in how they think it should be managed and what we should be doing. But what I do know, Madam Speaker, that there is a problem, and we are coming with a solution, and we are hoping to have this here in the first quarter of next year. And we are hoping, too, that we can have this EIA report completed in next year so that we then can start to push this east-west arterial road down the middle, or let me say the middle of the island, because some people think you're going straight through the middle, but to one side of the island it is more or less. Madam Speaker, we're talking about a road that was gazetted from, I think, Mr. Gilbert days. Mr. Arden came in behind him, tracked the whole road out. Madam Speaker, I have took 2 helicopter rides with different, each one of my colleagues in it, to take a look at this. Me and the Premier went on the first one, to take a look at the traffic flow, how it actually flows, where the bottlenecks are, to look at the east-west arterial road, where it's going down the path. We see the problems. We've brought back, we have spoken with our colleagues, our partners, and tasked the team to make sure that we come up with our solutions, because look, we realize how many people on the eastern side of the island sit in the government. So our team knows that this is something that we want to get delivered. I just hope that everybody here supports that road and support us when it comes time to get the money for that road. Because as far as I can tell you, I understand there's people up all the way up to Prospect and Red Bay complain about the traffic in the morning too. So I don't want the people up that far think that it's not bothering them. There's every one of us coming out of town that goes to the eastern side, either they getting caught in the morning or they getting caught in the evening. But, Madam Speaker, we realize that some of the reliefs that we are doing are taking our time to get in there to release all of these bottlenecks. Some of them are being held up by third parties, not NRA. But it is part of life when you're out there. But I can tell you one thing, we have not stopped pushing the NRA to make sure that they deliver what they have to deliver. Madam Speaker, I meet with the NRA team every Monday morning, 9 o'clock, in my office for an update on every single thing that they're doing, to make sure that every week they are counting off exactly what they told me from last week has been done, and keeping a close eye watch on this road. So, Madam Speaker, I stand here today and as I welcome the document the opposition leader provided to us. But, Madam Speaker, seeing that this document is almost as close as what my team is providing, I must say that sometimes I wonder how the opposition leader has good intel. But I want to say that I stand here this morning or this afternoon and I can't support this motion that he's bringing. But what I do tell him is when we're back here in the quarter next year, first quarter next year, if there's something in that bill that he sees incoming, he will be able to have the opportunity then to voice the opinion on there. I cannot sit down here and support that motion coming across, knowing that the work that my team has done and is already to bring this to the forefront. So, Madam Speaker, I just want everybody to know that I will not be supporting that particular motion, and the members from the other side will have their opportunity to speak when we bring it in January. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member
I think he did.
call
Yeah.
on the Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hear you, cuz. Loud and clear. I heard you when you were speaking too. Madam Speaker, I was hoping I wouldn't have to speak, that the government was going to accept this motion in good faith. But, Madam Speaker, let me start by mentioning some of the statistics contained in the 2020 recommendations report from the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation. As of January 2020, a total of 44,906 vehicles were registered by the Department of Vehicle and Driver's Licenses, or DVDL. Over 75,000 vehicles were on the register, with approximately 44,906 vehicles listed as active, which leaves a further 30,094 vehicles in limbo and in various unknown states of disrepair. The largest percentage of registered vehicles at the time was 15 years old, or 30% of vehicles. Up to 5 years old represented 22% of vehicles, and up to 10 years old represented some 19%, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in 2011, new vehicles accounted for the majority of overall imports by 62%, versus some 28% used vehicles being imported. Fast forward to 2019, the trend had shifted considerably, showing the complete opposite, with used vehicles accounting for the most in overall imports at 71% of all cars being imported being used, compared to the lesser 29% of new cars imported. Through December 2019, used vehicles imported by non-licensed importers stood at 2,788, or 53%, as compared to 1,670 imported by dealers, or 32%. Those are new vehicles. Topping this list of imported vehicles were from Japan, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, the trend here is obvious. And whilst these stats are a few years old, there is little doubt that the trend has not changed. And so, not only do we have a traffic problem, as the Leader of Opposition noted, but we have a glut of used cars being imported. To a large extent, it is an issue that several of these recommendations being considered seek to resolve. And so, Madam Speaker, because I heard several misguided comments next from across the aisle, I'll examine these recommendations a bit closer. Recommendation 1. Caymanians should be allowed a maximum of 2 vehicles per year that may be imported into the Cayman Islands. Caymanians importing more than 3 or more vehicles per calendar year should be defined in one of 2 categories, namely reseller or collector. Reseller, persons should be required to have a trade and business license and other requirements similar or identical to the licensed car dealers, new cars or used, combined with other restrictions. Collectors, persons should be subject to an annual registration fee, $50 to $100 perhaps, identified with a special edition collector's plate for each new import. A special collector's plate would be commissioned and owners charged between $500 to $750 for the plate. Madam Speaker, this recommendation may be controversial, but most Caymanians purchasing a car for personal use will not likely have an issue with this. Caymanians who are operating an unlicensed car dealership may have an issue, but they can be regularized if they get a trade and business license along with fulfilling other requirements to operate legally. Those Caymanians who collect cars in this scenario are also covered. Madam Speaker, recommendation 2 speaks to ownership restrictions being recommended for short-term work permit holders, that is 3 to 12-month work permits. These persons would be restricted from importing or owning an automobile. Leasing, co-oping, and carpooling are recommended alternatives. Madam Speaker, let me take an opportunity to read that back over carefully, because I heard the Honourable Minister of Tourism say that we were proposing to stop foreign people from driving. Ownership restrictions are recommended for short-term work permit holders. That is 3 to 12-month work permits. These persons would be restricted from importing or owning an automobile. Leasing, co-oping, and carpooling are recommended alternatives. They can, though, own a motorcycle or a moped under 125 cc's, as noted in the recommendation, or a bicycle. This is certainly potentially controversial, and so will need public debate. However, there is a good argument that individuals here, over short periods, should utilize the existing public transport system, lease a car, or purchase a motorcycle, a moped, or a bicycle. The case for this recommendation is also made much stronger, Madam Speaker, if the committee's recommendation on improving public transport is implemented. And I will talk to that shortly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, recommendation 3 speaks to long-term permit holders. Permits 12 months or more would be allowed to own vehicles, but would be required to purchase a vehicle from a local supplier. Again, potentially controversial, though many long-term work permit holders already purchase cars from local dealers. As a parliament, Madam Speaker, we do have a duty to ensure that our local economy is supported, and this will assist in that effort. Madam Speaker, recommendation 4 speaks to age restrictions on vehicle imports. The report recommends that persons would be allowed to import vehicles that are no older than 10 years. Madam Speaker, personally, I think that is too high, with a goal of further reducing this age to 6 years as public transportation, that is, improves. We are all aware of the problem with very old cars that can be obtained cheaply, being imported and are on the road for a few years, but then left in our communities abandoned. These not only add to our traffic woes, but also worsen an already serious refuse problem once they stop working. Moreover, newer cars are more fuel efficient, less polluting, and built to the latest safety standards, so a ban on older vehicles, Madam Speaker, will bring other sustainable benefits, such as lowering our carbon footprint. So when we get that new road, that east-west arterial, Minister, at least the cars will be energy efficient and lower carbon footprints. In my view, this recommendation is a reasonable proposal, but again, it's coupled with improving our system of public transport. And as I said, I'll get to that later. Madam Speaker, recommendation 5 would require that all used car imports come with an official inspection certificate to confirm the age and other details regarding the car. Surely this is just a common sense recommendation to ensure both compliance with our rules and that safety standards are maintained. Madam Speaker, recommendation 6 covers employee flex time or employees working from home, which again I think most people now accept is increasingly becoming part of how we do business in this post-COVID modern world. Madam Speaker, recommendation 7 recommends buses for private schools, including offering duty incentives for private schools to purchase their own bus or extending the existing yellow school bus service already provided to public schools. More children using a school bus, especially for private schools, will equate to fewer cars on the road on the mornings and again later in the day when school closes. The recommendation also suggests that staggering the school commencement times for both public and private schools could provide a reduction in traffic congestion. Consideration, Madam Speaker, therefore should be given to adjusting primary and secondary commencement and conclusion times. Madam Speaker, I will say that during the development of this report, a committee was put together, including the Ministry of Education, and I will recognize their willingness to look at opportunities, and I think there were some solutions that were found, including, I do believe it was Savannah Primary, that they were able to open their gates a bit earlier because the PTA had volunteers that would stay with the kids until they got there. So that was useful. So out of that exercise, we did find some solutions at that time. Madam Speaker, recommendation 8, as the Leader of the Opposition highlighted, is to allow the introduction of reversible lanes on some of our major multi-lane roads. This would allow traffic to travel in either direction, Madam Speaker, and depending on the time of the day, so that more capacity is available for traffic going in the dominant direction. As opposition leader noted, Madam Speaker, this is worthy of consideration, but would require much work into it becoming a practical and safe solution. Recommendation 9, Madam Speaker, addresses the need for improved public transport and options for an app-based dial-a-ride or park-and-ride. Recommendation 10 recommends carpooling. It states, Madam Speaker, that 85% of cars coming into Georgetown in the morning have 1 or 2 people in them. As Minister, Madam Speaker, I rolled out various initiatives within the public service to encourage carpooling amongst civil servants. In 2019, with the help of the Deputy Governor's Office, we introduced a car-free day aimed at the public, and in 2021, we had a car-free week. Madam Speaker, these events were promising. The numbers were very encouraging, and with some individuals riding bicycles to work, including myself, Madam Speaker, working from home or taking a bus, and carpooling was also encouraged. The initiatives seem to have stopped, and I would encourage the government to restart them. Madam Speaker, that led to the bicycles being placed outside the government administration building. As many, when we did it that day and then the following year for a week, many of the staff at the GAB would use the bicycles to go out to lunch, etc., to move around town. Indeed, Madam Speaker, I would encourage them to go further. As part of the overall package of measures to be introduced in response to the committee's recommendations, I would urge the government to consider drawing up a transport and travel plan for the public service. Such a plan would encourage public servants to make sustainable transport choices for their trips to and from the workplace and better manage of their business travel. It has the potential to make a significant contribution to reducing emissions while improving public sector productivity and, Madam Speaker, promoting health and well-being. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader noted that the last 2 progressive-led governments invested significantly in enhancements to the roads and highway network. Much of the work that we started is continuing under the government, and I give them kudos for not scrapping it. Madam Speaker, perhaps more significantly, we brought forward the delivery of the East-West Arterial Road extension and associated local improvements that will help ease the congestion problems coming in and out of Georgetown at peak hours. However, Madam Speaker, we also put in place or left plans to complete various roads to help move traffic more efficiently through Georgetown. Madam Speaker, these included work on the Shamrock Road, the Kings Connector Road, the Godfrey Nixon Way extension, and another important road that was started and is still incomplete is the Airport Connector Road that provides an alternative route from the airport to West Bay Road. Members will be aware of the parliamentary questions tabled by the opposition for this sitting, that we will keep pushing the government to ensure those vital improvements are completed as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, I was happy to receive the Honourable Minister's report on the works of his ministry, Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. And Madam Speaker, I noted the updates and I look forward to the continued work, in particular, I think, on that Airport Connector Road, which, as I was speaking to the Minister in the break, the traffic modeling system shows us that that will provide a tremendous amount of relief at that Butterfield roundabout, which is now becoming the sticking point once you have got into town. It backs traffic up to Shedden Road, to Eastern Avenue, and all the way as far down as the CIS roundabout on the Esley Tibbetts, and certainly all the way down to the bottom of Sparky Drive on the North Sound Road. And if you happen to land anywhere after 4:30 at the airport, you may as well find yourself a comfortable spot to sit for an hour or two, because you will not get out of North Sound Road. And that is something we need to be concerned about with our guests arriving in the evenings. Madam Speaker, my good friend, my cousin, the Honourable Minister of Tourism, spoke about all of the works that the Honourable Minister of Roads do for us and why we don't talk about it. So I will talk about it. I'll read from the report, Madam Speaker. Here are the roads in the districts that the Honourable Minister completed in the first 18 months. West Bay South, Madam Speaker, Captain Charlie Road, McDome Lane, Peace Lane, Marsh Road, Ernest Jackson Drive, Willie Kern Road, Eli Bush Street, Chestnut Drive, Violet Lane, Mary Molly Hydes Road. West Bay North, Sunny Powery Drive, Lenders Close, and Turtle Crescent. West Bay Central, Captain Joe and Osbert Road, Leona Lane, he only did 250 feet there, Madam Speaker, Hedges Lane, and Vibe Lane. Crescent Close, 4th Avenue, Skyway, 3rd Avenue, and Watercourse Road, a partial widening. In Newlands, it was Moonbeam Drive and Arlene Avenue, just 2 there. In Prospect, Dogwood Street and Evco Tor Road, just 2 there. Boddentown East, Nash Street, Wild Street, Belford Drive, Cherry Tree Drive, Boddentown Mission House Access Road. In East End, Madam Speaker, there is Tangelo Lane, Knott Street, Sierra, Little Bluff Road. Yeah, East, you got a few, more than 2. Prow by the East End United Church, Welcome Way, Fiddler's Way, and Sterling Lane. North Side, Madam Speaker, Further Road, Union Street, Eagle Street, Grant Street, Constantine Street, North Side Playfield, Clifton Hunter Bus Lay-by, and the Bayardale Road. Madam Speaker, so there's 28 more months to go. I'm confident that at some point, the Honourable Minister, to answer my Honourable friend and Honourable Minister of Tourism, at some point, my friend, the Minister of Roads, will get to Georgetown East, will get to Georgetown South, will get to Georgetown West, he may get to Red Bay, and I pray one day to see those pavers in Georgetown North. So, Madam Speaker, I'm so happy that the Minister of Tourism pointed that out to us in his debate. Madam Speaker,
I think I missed that. I think we need to repeat it.
the entire list, sir? Working hard. I could do the numbers, but then I would. The 2 that I remember, I can read, Madam Speaker, I remember 2, I remember several. Okay. Georgetown East 0, Georgetown South 0, Georgetown West 0, Red Bay 0, Georgetown North 0, Newlands 2, and Prospect 2. I remember those. Madam Speaker, increasing the capacity of the road network was only a partial answer to the problems we face on Grand Cayman. As I have said many times, we cannot build ourselves out of this problem without these and other measures. The work of the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation gives some important pointers into the other kinds of actions that will be required, Madam Speaker, if we are to deliver a comprehensive and long-lasting solution to Cayman's traffic woes. During the debate on the government's strategic policy statement, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition was highly critical of the Minister's decision to cancel the free Georgetown shuttle. As the Leader pointed out, as well as providing a valuable service, the shuttle was helping to promote the switch to public transport, and canceling it sent all the wrong messages about the PAC's commitment to an effective public transport system. Another PAC mishap. The commitment of the Progressives to deliver such a system.
Honourable member, are you rising on a point of order?
Yes, Madam Speaker. A point of elucidation. Just asking the member, is he saying that I, as Minister for Transport, cancelled his bus route? Did I understand him to say that?
I did not say which minister, Madam Speaker, so I apologize. That was being done through the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative, which was under the Minister of Pahi. Madam Speaker, the commitment of the Progressives to deliver such a system is not in doubt. The Leader concluded that the section of his SPS remarks by saying, I urge the government to bring forward plans for a future public transport solution for these islands at the earliest opportunity. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader continued and advised the government that the works was already started under the member of Georgetown North when he was minister. He had previously told his House that he had asked his ministry to proceed with procuring expertise in the public transport to recommend the best options for us to consider. Indeed, Madam Speaker, our 2020-2021 SPS noted that the government will commission a specialist mass transportation study to analyze the options available for us to achieve the necessary step change in public transport that the country needs. Like many things, these plans were hampered by COVID, but the ministry was preparing to move forward following the election. So I urge the government to ignore where the plans came from, but to instead move forward. Let's see what are the best long-term options for us rather than trying some band-aid approach. In short, Madam Speaker, everything was in place for the incoming government to take rapid strides forward in developing a new public transport system for Cayman. It is disappointing that it has taken the minister 18 months, and this is the Minister of Transport now, to get the necessary contract for a consultancy study in place. He fervently defended that, saying that all sorts of things, open up the country and all, but he did have enough time to go to Barbados, try buy some buses. So I think that at least is where some of the 18 months have gone.
Madam Speaker, can the minister clarify when I went to Barbados to purchase buses?
Madam Speaker, it was widely publicized across the island that the minister visited Barbados, visited the public transport system there, spoke to the idea of doing a joint purchase of buses and copying the Barbados plan. It was widely publicized, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, can the honourable member provide the publications upon which he said that I was there to purchase vehicles? I asked him to have them available to this honourable House as per the standing orders.
Madam Speaker, I'll answer him in writing, but just to clarify then. The Honourable Minister attended a conference in Barbados. He took along with him a staff from the Public Transport Unit to attend a conference in Barbados. Whilst he was in Barbados, according to his press releases and the newspaper reports, he met with the Barbados Public Transport Authority, or the equivalent thereof, and the discussions were held as to copying their system and to doing a joint purchase to get the buses at a better price.
Madam Speaker, I really do not want to belabor this point, but as per the standing orders, unless he cannot provide those today,
Madam
he has
Speaker,
to
I'm not
withdraw
reading
the
from
comment
anything,
because
Madam
it's
Speaker.
not factual.
I am not reading from anything. I am not reading from anything, Madam Speaker. It was widely publicized, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the strategic policy statement makes several references to PAC's intention to improve public transport. That document recognizes both the social and economic benefits that will flow from getting a modern and efficient public transport system in place on Grand Cayman. Yet, Madam Speaker, nearly 18 months after the SPS, it is only now that the Minister has taken action. I hope this doesn't continue into another PAC mishap, and hopefully the report he has now commissioned from his selected consultants will deliver. And Madam Speaker, I will recognize that we were contacted, certainly I was contacted by the consultants for a meeting. I was unfortunately off island and we have rescheduled that meeting. Madam Speaker, I say hopefully, because the Minister's statements on radio, talk shows, and elsewhere still leaves me with the nagging doubt that he thinks the consultancy study is just there to rubber stamp a solution of his own making. It seems, Madam Speaker, the only thing he is interested in is whether Cayman needs a government-run bus service, privately run buses, or a mix of the two. Madam Speaker, this is putting questions about the form of a solution before you have an answered question about its function. In my view, Madam Speaker, the study needs to look properly at all the potential public transport solutions. Madam Speaker, those could include but not limited to buses, or potential solutions might include anything from trams to water ferries to electric scooters. Just during the lunch break, we had a robust conversation across the aisle about all of these ideas. Madam Speaker, the study needs to look at what is viable and feasible for Cayman, and the consultants need to be free to recommend whatever solution or mix of solutions best meets the Grand Cayman's future needs, and not some other country's plans or needs. The recommendations need to suit and meet Grand Cayman's future needs, Madam Speaker. I hope the Minister will reassure me at some point that the current review will include a full option appraisal. I hope he will publish the terms of reference that the consultants are now working on, so that we can all be clear on the intentions behind the study. And I hope, Madam Speaker, he will commit now to publishing the full report once it is available. I beat him up enough already. I can't do it. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, as the SPS suggests, and I would argue, there are clear economic and social benefits from improving our public transport system. Why was there not a clear investment plan as part of the 2022-23 budget? Even allowing for some delay after the elections, Madam Speaker, if a study had been commissioned and completed by now, we would have expected the first phases of investments next year. But this government made no provisions for any such investments, as the Minister said in his debate, that he will be coming in the next budget phase looking for the money. I am worried, Madam Speaker, and I'm concerned that that may be too late. Madam Speaker, next budget cycle, there will be no excuse. The consultants will have reported, and the way forward on public transport should be clear. And this is an issue that requires action, Next budget cycle, the country needs to see real investment in a viable solution, not just warm words in a SPS document. So, Madam Speaker, I will hold the Minister to his word that he will be bringing a solution next year, and he will have my support if I believe in a solution for the financing. Madam Speaker, I do agree with the opposition leader that traffic is a complex problem, and there is no single silver bullet solution that will resolve the problem. Madam Speaker, by utilizing these recommendations, 3, 6, or 10, it doesn't matter to me. I do hope the government will be able to put their minds to developing the kind of innovative solutions that our country needs. I do hope, Madam Speaker, that the government will accept the motion and do the necessary work so that by March of 2023, their midterm, they will report back with a comprehensive set of proposals to tackle the traffic congestion. Madam Speaker, I think I'm going to leave it at that, Madam Speaker. And again, I just encourage, as the Honourable Minister of Tourism said before, he said a few other things, this should not be considered a political football. It affects all of us, no matter where you live in Cayman now, because even from West Bay, the traffic is backing up. And so I encourage the government, and perhaps the civil service used the recommendations and the research that they had done for this report to compile the report to them. Now, as it is the government's will to do so. So again, I encourage the government, those on the other side, to take the time to have a look through the report. If you thumb through this report, when you have I assume you will have a presentation to your caucus on any findings that may come out of the studies, that you may see something in this report that they may have overlooked. So I encourage them all, take the report, have a look at it, and consider the recommendations in them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, does the mover wish to exercise his... Oh, I'm sorry. The Honourable Deputy Speaker.
I don't know who hit today. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought I should get up and register my voice as Bordentown is suffering immensely, and I hear both sides, Madam Speaker, and I pray there's a solution in the horizon. But I stand to believe that this country expects a solid plan, and one expeditiously. What we need to do, in my opinion, and a lot of my constituents, is to start the road all the way to Lookout Gardens. There's nothing hard in making that decision. That is my public opinion for the people of Bordentown. Yes, North Side and East End suffer the same traffic woes, and I keep saying it all the time. Bordentown has the worst situation, and we need to act fast. This thing of waiting on this and waiting on that, yes, we missed the ball some years ago. We are where we are, we have a major problem, Madam Speaker. When you're driving from Northside, you can drive a couple miles, turn out your gate. When you're driving from East End, you can drive a couple miles, turn out your gate. When you're driving from Borden Town, you cannot turn out your gate. Madam Speaker, I want my people to know that I'm prodding as much as I can in trying to find a solution. There's no easy fix, and there's not one thing that will cure this, and there's many things that we could try. As suggested earlier, and I don't have to go into them. I've been talking about a tram system for years now. I've been talking about a holding point in Prospect or spots for years now. Madam Speaker, I think we just need to make a decision and move at it quickly. One of my supporters who have passed on had a saying in our meetings when she asked me if certain things would get done. And she would say, nothing not gonna get done because they got this old drag foot policy. Madam Speaker, the eastern districts are punishing daily. The children are tired. The parents are tired. People are getting up, some from 4:30, some at 5 o'clock. I know, Madam Speaker, I have the children also. Some of them got insomnia. You talk about accidents. This is what happens when people are tired. So I hold no punches when it comes to finding a solution for my people. And yes, they're going to have this group rallying and this group rallying while our people suffer daily. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to say to my people, I feel your pain. I actually drive that road also. I'm right in the center of it. And we must find a solution. We can do some temporary measures. Everything don't have to be permanent. But at least if 400 cars a month is coming in, and Borden Town or eastern districts are the fastest growing districts, then where you think the cars are going? Madam Speaker, before I hit the wrong button, I'm going to press this red one. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think my voice has been heard.
Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Red Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my leader and deputy leader have both, I think, very comprehensively addressed this issue. And so, Madam Speaker, I am not going to go into what's in the report that we are asking the government to consider. That's all. I don't think I have ever heard a minister with responsibility for a subject stand up and say so little as did the minister for roads some time ago. Even if he had just sat down and named out all the roads in Northside that he paved since he's been in office, he would have done something. He was so dismissive of the report. He wouldn't even stay in here to listen to what the former minister, who has a grasp on this subject that I hope someday the current minister will gain. The road system alone, Madam Speaker, is not, all of us agree, is not going to resolve the problem. But it will go a long way. But the first thing the government did when they took office was to essentially down tools on all of the road projects that were on the way. The minister, on his, or at least on his instruction, I am told from my people that talked to me in the NRA, insisted that the paver be sent north to fix every road up there. And as the minister, as the deputy leader who spoke earlier, the deputy leader of the opposition, said, every constituency except those which the opposition represent had roads fixed or improved. You wonder why there is no apparent strategy to address the road system and the issues with it? Because that's not what's on the minister's mind. What's on his mind is trying to ensure re-election the next time. Madam Speaker, I've been elected 6 times consecutively. When you're elected, you're supposed to do the things that you, as far as possible, that you promised the people you were going to do. You're supposed to carry out a job, not spend every moment and every cent trying to ensure that you get elected the next time to do what? Do the same thing all over again? The Minister for Roads was presented with a great set of plans and projects that were underway, which, had he moved so they could have been completed before this government demits office, they would have put a statue to him up in Heroes Square, because he would have gone a long way to resolve the problems. But when we take this parochial approach to what is a national issue, you get what we have now, which nothing of consequence is happening except the Linford-Pearson extension, which was begun under the administration which I had the honor and privilege to lead. The airport connector road should have been finished long time. The connection from Eastern Avenue to North Church Street should have been completed long time. But they down tools. The people in our NRA told us we don't have any direction to proceed. They want to consider this, and they want to consider that. They want to rethink this, they want to rethink that. 18 months later, where's the plan? And then, Madam Speaker, there is this approach by some on that side, I won't say all, because some of them who are not happy with it have spoken to me, is that they seem to believe, some of them, particularly the Premier, that you can make an omelette without breaking eggs. Madam Speaker, more than 70% of Grand Cayman is or was mangrove swamp. Now you tell me how we expect to continue to grow a country, to develop without intruding on some of that. One of the great ironies, and I have to deal with this in my own constituency, which, by the way, the constituencies of what constitutes now the constituencies of Prospect and Red Bay were almost 100% swamp when I was a boy. Very little dry land. Some of it was what the old man, my father, used to say, the only reason it is land is because it's not sea. So when Sally Watler, Mr. Selkirk Watler, God rest his soul, that is good friend, Bob Watler's father, when he decided to develop what became known as Red Bay Estates, people thought he was a madman because that was all mangrove swamp. So how we are going to continue to develop this country without intruding on some of the central mangrove wetlands is beyond my ability to understand. And one of the great ironies, which I started to say, of people who live in part in the newer part, I call the newer part of South Sound, because when I was a boy, there was virtually nothing east of the cemetery in terms of homes. I wonder how many people realize that the whole of South Sound was dredged, and that's why those homes are, all those expensive homes, that's why they're built, can be built out there. One of what I considered, even as a child, one of the most precious possessions, natural, that we had was filled in to make way for that, called Tarpon Lake. I'm not calling no names. Wasn't just him. That and Red Bay and Prospect are all, almost all, reclaimed or dredged land. I don't know how many migras, lagoon snappers, and the like we shot in South Sound in those big pipes that they used, which were still left there after the dredging was over, and loads of fish life was there. That's what I grew up doing, from Prospect Point down to Pulling Badam Point. We used to be spearfishing. That's how I grew up. But now, Madam Speaker, that people have built homes, have these developments, they live there happily. They don't want nobody else to touch one mangrove root. And anyone who speaks the way I do, they say, oh, they don't care for the environment. Don't care for the environment. My roots here go back, Madam Speaker. On my mother's side, I don't know how far she was aborted. On Daddy's side, 200 years. I care not only about now, but I care about the future, my children, and if one day I have grandchildren, and all of those who inherit these beautiful islands. But we have gone too far down the road to tell people, you know what, we got too many of you all here now, and I need to go back. The population is about 80,000. I remember saying some years ago, and I was beaten over and over and over again, I still see it now and again, that our policy of the governments that I led was to push for a population of 100,000. That was not the case at all. That was my projection, which is proving accurate, given the trends. And we still have to prepare for that. Saying, oh, woe is me. What are we going to do about this? Is not going to come close to fixing the problem. The deputy leader of the opposition came up, or he and his team came up with what I thought, and I think most of us around the table, including in those early days, the Honorable Kirk Tibbetts, was the best approach to trying to address the developmental issues.
Honorable Member for Red Bay, just want to pause for a minute to call for a suspension of Standing Order 10-2 as we have now passed the hour of 4:30.
You want me to do it, ma'am? Anybody can do it, but seriously, anybody can. You can vote it up or vote it down.
Madam Speaker, rise to move the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 in order to allow the business of the House to continue beyond the hour of 4:30.
All those in favor, please say aye. All those against, no. The ayes have it. Please continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was starting to talk about what was named by the minister, the then minister, the now deputy leader of the opposition, Plan Cayman, as what most of us who have been around thought was the best concept we had seen to address the lack of a current development plan for Grand Cayman. Because you see, Madam Speaker, minister after minister has tried and failed to get a proper development plan review completed during his or her term. And it is something that is mandated by the development and planning law. But the cycle takes so long and the issue is so contentious that virtually any minister who ever tried to do that lost his or her seat. Because no matter what you do, and this is not just true of Cayman, the developed world over, these things, people have very strong views, sometimes extreme views on either side of the development spectrum. You see, people in poor countries, like Cayman was, when all of that started, they were so happy to see something happening that everything was okay. But now we reach a certain stage, everybody debates everything. And for most people, if I have it, I don't want anybody else to have it. I built there, but I don't want anybody else to build there. You hear it over and over and over and over again. And so these things cause the development plan process to never get completed. So the concept of Plan Cayman was we take it one section, area at a time. And you complete that and you keep moving forward. The first was to be 7 Mile Beach. Then, of course, along came COVID, and that became a victim, like many other things that we wanted to get done during our tenure. But the new government's first approach to it was a terrible idea. The Premier kicked it into touch. They had to go back out and get it and bring it back, though. But 18 months on, we still have nothing. And, Madam Speaker, if you might be thinking, well, but what is that to do with the transportation issue which is before us? It has everything to do with it. Because they can ban the importation of cars as much as they want, but cars don't drive themselves. They're making some that can do that, but I don't see any of them here yet. Every car you see going along that road got at least one person in it. I can assure you of that. So banning the importation of cars or restricting it, in my view, is only going to create another set of problems. Because when only certain people can bring vehicles in, the prices can go. So, Madam Speaker, I know a lot of expats. And I can tell you many of them, especially those that work in the service areas, in the restaurants, the bars, do massages and that kind of service stuff, they would be delighted if they didn't have to invest in a car. Because for most of them, where they came from, they couldn't drive, let alone had a car. They were used to getting on a bus or by some means getting back and forth wherever they want to. So the reason why they buy these vehicles is because they need them. And so those who suggest that, well, we can ban that section or that sector of our population, say they can't get in the cars, how do people get to work if you don't have a system in place to allow it? So you have to look at all of these considerations, and I understand, Madam Speaker, the frustrations. I live in Prospect. The people who live in Prospect and Red Bay, the constituencies, the cars coming off the east-west arterial, trying to make it, to get 2 cars ahead, come down through Poindexter and onto Marina Drive, usually Marina Drive, but sometimes Mangrove or Mahogany as well, to try to get back out on the main road. What do you think that does to the people who live there? The Deputy Speaker mentioned just now about getting out of your driveway. I have constituents who complain they can't get out of their driveway, not because of traffic generated by where they live, but the traffic coming down off the east-west arterial. The poor people who live in Red Bay Estates, it's almost like a suicide mission every morning to try to get out of there because they got to come out and go east to be able to turn on to, I don't think that got a name, the road that leads on to the roundabout there across from Red Bay Primary School, or go all the way up around the Thompson roundabout. We all feel this. We all see this. And everybody who lives here is frustrated by it. Not just the Caymanians. The Caymanians cost the foreigners. But, but we can't live without the foreigners. And anybody who suggests that it'll be the same Cayman got another thing coming. So I suppose, Madam Speaker, what I'm saying by saying all of these different things is to say that this, somebody used the word holistic, I don't know if he knew what it meant, but that it does require a holistic approach to these issues. And simply, the Minister for Roads to simply reject out of hand without even considering, let alone speaking, to the report which is the subject of this motion. It is really a sad indictment of the government. It suggests to those who are listening that they don't care, or at least the minister don't care. He don't care about anything that was there before he came. And he must believe that somehow when he took that oath of office, all of the knowledge relating to transportation issues was just zoomed into his head. So he knew all the answers. He don't have to consider anything that anybody else said or did before he came. And so what he has to show to the country after 18 months in office is that he knows how to hire island paving to pave roads which had already been built. Not built one road. not extended one road in 18 months. He might have done them in your constituency that we don't know about. But perhaps when you get up, when you get up, Mr. Bush, you'll explain all that to us. But Madam Speaker, seriously, and I'm saying this principally to the Honorable Premier, my long-time friend, I sat down beside him in law school for 5 years. That's how long we know each other, really know each other. That he needs to get past this idea that building the east-west arterial is a bad thing. We have to find a way to do it with the least adverse environmental
Madam
impact.
Speaker, on a point of order.
Honorable Premier, what is your point of
Madam
order?
Speaker, I am very open to discussion. I let people pass by on issues. But Madam Speaker, he cannot, the member from Red Bay, cannot stand over there and make assertions that he can't prove. He is suggesting and misleading this House and suggesting that I am against the east-west arterial. I have issued a public statement, Madam Speaker, confirming that I am in support of getting the road done, but getting it done properly, by getting the EIA done. Madam Speaker, I'm going to speak later about this, because 3 times now, 3 times in his contributions, and when he's sitting over there, he's made these statements. Madam Speaker, he's misrepresenting the position, my position. I have supported my colleagues in getting this EIA done, to get this road done. That's where he has failed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure that was a point of order, but that's fine. I like the explanation. And I think the country will be... I think the country will be relieved to know, even his colleagues on the other side will be relieved to know that the Premier is supporting the continuation of the east-west arterial. Because that's not what we are hearing everywhere we go.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Premier.
this is again a continuation of the same line. This is pure politics. This is an attempt to mislead this House, and in particular to mislead my colleagues over here. I support the EIA, the east-west arterial, but I support it being done properly. I have been pushing to get the proper process done, unlike what the previous administration failed to do over the last 8 years. I'll come on to that. But I do not appreciate an attempt to mislead the public or mislead the members of this House. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Premier was a minister in one of those governments. He knows very well the efforts that we made to get the EIA. In fact, but it wasn't until almost the last year that the issue about an EIA was even raised by DOE. But if he believes that the people of this country, most of the people of this country, are really focused on a EIA while they are sitting in their cars for hours trying to get from Northside and East End and Borden Town and Prospect and Red Bay to town, then he really has the wrong end of that stick. I don't hear one soul talking about a EIA in my constituency. What they say to me is, Mr. Alden, what are you going to do with this thing? So, Madam Speaker, we really do need to get a development plan in place. We need to think carefully about how we want to see Cayman continue to develop. And I am certainly, Madam Speaker, not one of those that subscribe to this thing that we want in eastern districts, the same thing we got down Georgetown. And if you talk to the people up in the eastern districts, they can tell you they don't want that either. So this idea about carrying all the loads of businesses up there is not one that I support. Part of the magic of these islands is that you can get so many different kinds of experiences in such a small geographical area. As far as I'm concerned, 7 Mile Beach, years and years ago, we ceded that to the tourists. Years and years ago. We ceded the Caymanians sold their land. I hear people about this government did this and this. Wasn't government that sold the land? It was Caymanians looking to improve their lot in life, and who could blame them? Many mistakes have been made looking back now 50, 60 years later. But very few on that side are old enough to understand how poor Cayman was. Into the 70s, especially those of us who come from to windward. East End is the poorest district in the Cayman Islands. By a long shot. I remember when East End got electricity, and I'm only 6 to 1. I was a big boy. So, Madam Speaker, let's not, I hope, go down the road of saying we can do Rum Point and Cayman Kai what we done 7 Mile Beach. Because those are the extremes of the island. People who want a nice, slower, quieter vacation or lifestyle can still go to windward and find it. Those who want a much more Miami Beach-like experience, go 7 Mile Beach. And so, Madam Speaker, that brings me to, if you want a real, even quieter, you can go Cayman Brac. And if you really want to get away from it all, you can quit the world and go Little Cayman. That is part of the magic of these islands. So I hope that part of this idea about how we're going to manage transportation issues really isn't seriously focused on evening out the population and the commercial activity and hotels and so forth by sending more of them to windward. But, Madam Speaker, and that there is a motion coming, so I won't dwell on this about that. But this whole issue about erosion of the beaches, particularly on the northern and western end of the island, some of it to the south too, is largely the result of the construction of walls and other structures too close to the water. If we want to address that issue, we're going to have to make some other concessions. If we want to stop building so many buildings, we're going to have to go higher and encourage investors. The trade-off for the height is the setback. I won't live long enough to see the benefit of most of that, even if I live as old as grandfather was. These things take time. But we have seen over the last 10 years the redevelopment of most of the earlier condominium projects which were along 7 Mile Beach, because the land became so valuable that it was viable for them to demolish those structures and build taller structures and still make lots more money. But those are the kinds of discussions and decisions that need to be taken about the overall continued development of these islands and what sort of population targets we are looking for and what infrastructure we are going to be able to put in place to accommodate that. But anyone who believes that you can simply turn off the tap and freeze things and all will be well, I think are gravely mistaken. I believe that firmly that the day we stop growing is the day that as a country we start dying. We have got to evolve with the time. We've got to create and provide the amenities that the modern world wants. Otherwise, our own people are going to go elsewhere to seek it, because the expectation levels of people who live in Cayman, not just Caymanians, but people who live in Cayman for any length of time, are incredibly high. No, it's the other way around. They don't want you over there anyhow, so you might as well come. So, Madam Speaker, I would urge the government not to be led in their approach on this by the approach taken by the Minister for Roads. Don't just kick this report and these recommendations into touch. All the motion is asking is that the government to consider them. But we also urge, as the deputy leader of the opposition has said, let's get on with it. 18 months is enough time dithering. Let's do something. Before they blink, this term is going to be over. And on its present trajectory, little or nothing will have been achieved as far as improving the transportation and traffic situation in Cayman. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for West Bay West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I heard that when the motions didn't run as they would normally run, which is by numerical order, that it was hoped that we would take the shorter ones first. Doesn't seem so. Because when I looked at this motion, it says that it resolved that the government consider as a matter of urgency reviewing the recommendations in the report and publishing a response to the recommendations, setting out which recommendations will be implemented. But when the mover got up, he went from one end of the world to the next. And it didn't center around that discussion at all. And in spite of me agreeing with much of what my friend, the member from Red Bay, said, I think he's been a little bit unfair to the minister. In defense of the minister took the position that he is doing something substantial in getting the road system in a position where our people are not hurting from the position we are in regards to the national problem we face in transportation or in vehicles, which makes the transportation, I guess. But I can't agree with him that the minister didn't do the right thing and that he's not doing anything, because if anything can be said of this minister, it can be said that this minister has been doing things, and yes, there are the big things, and the big thing is a whole transport system, which is split, I think, between two ministers. And the next big issue for those who live in the east is the east-west corridor. So this discussion went from criticism on district roads to a Barbados trip. We all know that, Madam Speaker, that there are too many vehicles in this country. And no matter how many roads we build, it's going to be that problem too. Because everybody, there is no limitations. You travel this road and you see 3 people from one house. 3 different cars. And you go to their house, you find a truck too. Now, we don't want to limit what people need and the pleasures they have and their independence, because that's a big thing. I want to get in my car and go. I can't wait on Daddy. I can't wait on Mama. I got to do my own thing. The independent feeling of people. And we know that because most of us have adult children. So we know. And if we don't know, if we say we don't know, then we're not telling the truth. We know how them younger people feel. They are independent, they want to get going, but we have to take positions that we know. Because we are older, and while they may say we fool, we know the impacts and what is happening. And we know while they want something done, if we do all that they expect, no matter what we do, we're not going to satisfy. We're not going to get the problem fixed. We all know that there are too many vehicles in this country. And this thing about the report, let me just say, when I read, because I must admit, this is the first time I've seen that report. I don't think that report was tabled in the House. I don't think so. No, it wasn't tabled. I think I would have remembered that. But, many of these issues have been bandied about for a long time. Because I know that my government, in various ones, took on the problem. We suggested a limitation on vehicles and put in a bus system and was nearly 8 about it. I offered, because we were dealing with peace, because this thing of our traffic and vehicles and transport can't just be dealt with one piece, a road, or just dealing with taxes. But if you deal with each piece, at least it's going to eliminate some of the problems we face. I even offered to buy vehicles and give the taxes so that they would be a regime that is well known, rather than everybody doing their own thing. That I would buy the buses and let them be invested by the Caymanians. Oh yeah, I was nearly 8. And do ask the things that they said. You know how good they can do that? The East-West corridor, Madam Speaker, this is not new. The same time I was doing the West Bay bypass, I suggested that we do the East-West corridor. And nope, didn't want that either. That we can get it. Well, I wish he had got it. He would have had it. And that's one of the problems. Likey. Don't like this one. This one can get something out of it. Oh yeah, him can't do that. Can't make him get it. Yeah? One mistake. My wife was in Sherry's. And in between Monday and Tuesday, I made 5 or 6 trips there. I wish to God I'd put a West Bay. But the one mistake I made, and when I said, go, we go east with it. I didn't do the east-west corridor because I don't care about lime lizards and anything else. Human life first. That's my position. We have to plan, of course, and I think the member for Red Bay position, I don't think it's much different from what I've heard the Premier say about what he wants done. He wants to do it through these different, I guess, let's for a better word say scientific way. But we can't sit down all the time and wait on those things. Can't, because this government don't have the time to do it. It'll be forever. And yes, there are many factors, many issues to our traffic problems, and they can't be, at this junction in our development stage, be cured in one sit down. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. There's too many facets to it. I hope that you try to deal with the North Sound, and I'll talk about that later on. You want to see the different things that is impacted there. Same thing. Because if they want to say we failed, let them accuse us. The fact is we tried. And there are many factors, not just in this house, that controls, it seems like, why certain governments can't get things done. A lot of other factors stop me from getting things done. And so, honorable members, I am not agreeing that our minister is so far behind. No, I'm not going to say that because I know the work that he has put in and the same problems that the last administration had, he'd back up on them the same way. Same people, bureaucracy. When I was preaching it, they put it on the video and put an afro on my head. See this year? That's how they made fun of me. The bureaucracy in this country is killing the country. And it will continue to do so. When the Prime Minister in England told me he had cut out 1,000 pages of planning regulations for them. That's what he said to me. I say, yeah, but you all want to complain because I want to raise the heights of the building? No, we're not complaining. That's got to be done right. I say, yeah, done right, all right. Don't get nothing done. Starve to death, save lime lizards. $1,000 pages. But look at the bureaucracy that we have to go through in this country. That's a huge problem. And so I think our minister, to be fair to him, has done very well with the systems that are in place. And I think you all on the other side know what I'm saying, because I know that you went through some of it. Yeah, you all went through some of it. And I know that you told the governor too, you wasn't doing certain things. And so you went along about your business. So that's one of the things that the administration, how to deal with. Thank God I'm not in no executive position and never will be in this country again. Not trying to get in, not going to be pushed into it, not going to be begged into it, or otherwise. The problem in the country has been the politics. The politics don't want him to get credit for it. Oh, no, can't do that. That will make him too popular. I can't get an investigation anyhow. That slow him down. I hope that we are past that. I hope that we can understand where we as Caymanians stand, that we are a minority, and it's a minority because we know we need other people in the country. But we know that we are a minority and that we should be looking out for each other. But it seems the urgency is still there to destroy, to kill. No, I can't agree with this idea that our minister is at fault. And while I'm aggravated about things as I see it, because I know what I've tried to do in 40 years, 8 years there, 8 years over there, and so many here, and still over here, I know what we have tried, and different ministers in the governments have tried. Ministers that I've been against, but I know the things that they have tried to do. So I hope we can get past that idea that to get into power, they got to kill. I heard a member from Red Bay say that right over there. That was one of the problems. I'm repeating what he said at that time. So I am hoping that with what the minister, and I think there's 2 ministers working on it, is doing, that we will deal and get to some grips with some of the issues, because I don't think we can get it all done. But I'm not going to be here either to say that this administration is not moving in some right directions. Oh, I don't like slowness. I don't like bureaucracy. And I'm a man for development, because what the member from Red Bay said, he knows that's my position over the years. If we don't grasp wealth, we reap poverty. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give a short contribution to this motion, number 7 of 2020-23, moved by the Leader of the Opposition. Madam Speaker, every member that has spoken so far has acknowledged that traffic is a major problem, especially for us in the eastern districts. Not a day passes that I don't have representation from my own constituents on this very, very vexing issue, Madam Speaker. And quite frankly, it's one of those issues that keeps me awake at night. Just recently, Madam Speaker, I had need to speak to a constituent on a matter which was very early in the morning, and he told me he was on the way to town. And I heard a little child in the background, and he said that that was his daughter. This was at about 20 minutes to 6 in the morning. He said he was at Borden Town, that the child, he has to leave home so early because of the traffic, that he puts his children to sleep in the back seat of the vehicle until he gets to town. Then he gets and provides them with breakfast. before he takes them to school near 8 o'clock. That is no quality of life for our people in the Eastern Districts, Madam Speaker. None whatsoever. Private school. Madam Speaker, I must mention too that, like the Minister for Planning, I have also had to endure the same horrors that the good people of Eastern and the other Eastern districts have had to endure. And quite recently, because of a minor fender bender, I left home at about 5:45 to come to a meeting for 7:30 in Georgetown, and I never arrived at that meeting until 20 minutes past 8 because of a simple traffic accident. Again, this is no quality of life for our people in the Eastern districts. And Madam Speaker, our people on the Eastern North side, born down east, is affected the most. We spend longer time in the traffic, can hardly get out the driveways. My good colleague said, sitting in traffic, we burn more gas, so it affects us not in time only, but in our pockets. And Madam Speaker, we can't take a piecemeal approach to this situation. Madam Speaker, the government, and I know the Minister for Roads, as my colleague from West Bay West has alluded to, is working hard, and not like what the member from West Bay said. He is working hard to try and, with his colleague, Minister of Tourism, to develop a holistic solution to this. We know it's not going to be, the East-West Arterial is not going to be a silver bullet. We know that. We know it's going to take other measures to implement to tackle this traffic problem. But I also want to let people know publicly that I support the East-West Arterial as well too. Madam Speaker, I do know that the EIA that is required is in progress and well on the way, but I too would like to see it get done as quick as possible because we need to get this road so that we can get some relief to our people. My colleagues have all mentioned how difficult this is for every one of us. Public transportation system that we currently have, or what we call it, I'm not even too sure what to really say. We have so many people in the Eastern districts who rely on this, and yet still, when they get to Frankstown Junction, they turn around there, let our people off there, and insist that they're not going and completing the route. The only time they complete the route is when the transport officer is sitting at the Frankstown dock. Every time I pass and I see them doing something like that, I report them to the transport unit. I've had reports that a lot of the bus drivers, what they do, they sit behind in one of the roads near the Clifton Hunter High School and wait till an appropriate time before they come back out. They don't complete the route. It is very troubling, Madam Speaker, that our people in East End are relying on this method of transport to get to town, and it's non-existent at best. Madam Speaker, again, I said I'd make a short contribution because I knew that everyone else had the contribution they made was pretty much touching and rehashing and repeating a lot of what is already been done. But I must reiterate that this government is already looking and developing solid solutions for this problem that has grown over the years and was typically ignored. But we can no longer ignore it, Madam Speaker. We must take action now. I can only say that I feel the pain of my people, as my colleague from Barntown East has said. I feel the pain of my people because I too have to sit in that traffic. But I support the minister and the ministers in their efforts to find these solutions, and hopefully the members of the opposition will join in helping us provide these solutions as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member, the Honourable Premier?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this could be considered an afternoon of contradictions when it comes to many of the statements from the opposite side. Madam Speaker, let me say in response to the comments attacking the minister on this motion and his response on this motion. Those comments are not a true reflection of his response. His response was, Madam Speaker, that these recommendations that are set out in this pretty little report that we have been provided with are things that the government has spent time knocking our heads together about to come up with as well. Very similar things. So what he was saying, I think, was effectively we are going to be doing a lot of the same things. Madam Speaker, every time I stand here, I try to deliver and debate in a very calm and controlled manner, and I try not to get exercised. And I want to apologize. I know people will say this is a Westminster system, it's adversarial, but I prefer for the representatives of this country to try to work together and make their points clearly. Most people do, Madam Speaker. Most people don't try to misrepresent things. But I'll get back to that, Madam Speaker, because what I just want to say is I apologize for not sounding very calm earlier. My colleagues know that I am somebody who demonstrates a lot of patience. And occasionally, when I do not have sufficient patience, I typically apologize for that as well. Madam Speaker, the motion that has been brought is for the government to consider this report. I'll tell you, Madam Speaker, I have not seen this report before. And I can ask the member, the Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, why wait? Why wait until now to bring this report, table it here? You don't have to do that. you could send it to us and say, hey, you know, we've done a lot of work on this. There are some interesting proposals here. I have not actually seen this report before, Madam Speaker. That may be so. But you know when you come into office, no, everything is empty. The most you find is dust. Madam Speaker, I don't think this is bad work. I think this is actually good work, represents good effort by the former member, Mr. Harris.
And the same officers who are in the ministry still there.
Yeah. But my point is, if you thought it was good yourself, if you thought it was good today, why did you not send it to us before?
Because we left it there.
Oh, you left it. You left it on the desk. That's not the way it works. You know that, Mr. Leader. Sorry, I take it back. Mr. Former Leader, former Premier. You know it doesn't work that way. My point is, if it was a good idea today, it was a good idea before. You obviously knew that the traffic was going to be an issue. Mr. Not clarifying. I don't need no clarification. Madam Speaker, they can say all they want. My point is, if it was such a good idea, why didn't they just send it and say, hey, this is there, think about it, right? Madam Speaker, you know, some numbers were given about the numbers of cars that have been imported over the last 4 or 5 years. Staggering numbers. Madam Speaker, in 2019, 5,298 cars were imported. In 2020, 3,881 cars were imported. Madam Speaker, the average length of a car is probably almost 15 feet. In those 2 years, 2019 and 2020, 26 miles of cars were imported to this country if you stack them end to end. You go back before that, you'll understand why we have a problem. Yes, we have a traffic problem. All of us know that. We had a traffic problem before. We have a traffic problem now. It seems that I have to make a comment or apologize for certain things before the opposition react. I saw the first substantive point they made in this House, Madam Speaker, was to make a motion on adjournment after I pointed out that the country was facing significant inflationary issues and forces. Before I could even bring the statement, they jumped up with a motion on adjournment. So that's good, Madam Speaker, because then I know when I want to hear from them, I know how to get them to respond. And now we had this situation with Pirates Week. And as Premier, yes, I accepted responsibility because that's what I should do. And I have to tell the country that we're going to do something about it. And we are doing things about it. But there were some interesting circumstances around that, which included the following. Something like 16 accidents occurred that day around all the connector roads around Georgetown, which began the chain reactions and, of course, closing the roads that we closed for, or the organizers of the Paris Week committee. I think it was 16. 16 different accidents on different connector roads. So, Madam Speaker, we ended up with a situation which was not fair to the people of this country. So yeah, I accepted responsibility. So I guess that's why we now have this brought along, when if it was deemed by them to be fantastic, they could have just sent it along a long time ago. This discussion about 18 months and dithering, you know what we were dithering with in 18 months? We were dithering with the bigger challenge of reopening an economy that had been locked down, that was in a bubble, that was COVID naive, and we had all the challenges of trying to reopen that with all the fears of our people, trying to keep those under control and trying to do it in an orderly fashion, and trying to push vaccine penetration across the country, whatever people's views are in relation to that. We were more successful than anybody over on that side thought we were going to be in relation to that. So that is the kind of thing we were doing. Talking about dithering, that is the hardest part of dealing with COVID. Locking down was the easy part. And what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, is that this report is June 2020. They had more than 9 months that they could have implemented this. 9 months, Madam Speaker, at a time when there was no 9 months of nothing else to distract you, because you were in a completely isolated, closed borders position. Very little other distractions. So why didn't they bring this? Why didn't they implement this? When the chap that was doing it was trying to get the former premier's attention on it, I guess he couldn't get it done. I think this reflects a good effort, but it's, as has been said, the traffic situation is not going to go away just from limiting the importation of cars. But that is clearly a part of the solution. But while they didn't have any time to do this, Madam Speaker, they certainly found ways to spend $11 million in the run-up to the election on paving roads. Madam Speaker, I don't know. I've heard my friend, and I want to tell you, I regard them as my friends, but I have heard the member from Georgetown North list roads, and I've heard his complaints that some roads in constituents represented by the members on the other side were not done. What I don't know, Madam Speaker, is whether they had done all of them roads before that. I don't know. I do know this, Madam Speaker. I had, in my constituency, I had one significant road done, and I had one piece of road that was about 250 feet that was absolutely necessary. So it certainly doesn't represent an attempt to push anything in my constituency. I think others probably feel that, and particularly those districts towards the eastern side, feel that they didn't get a lot of attention back then. But I don't know, without looking at the full details, I don't know what the scenario is there. So I think the attempt to cast aspersions at the activities of the minister is unfair. You got to have more information than that to be able to justify that kind of, or those kind of allegations. I know what that means too. You should know. Yeah. But that's still not evidence. I don't know what roads were done. Yeah. Madam Speaker, we have this challenge. We're going to deal with it. The suggestion that in 18 months that this government has had to go through so much in terms of reopening this economy, getting economic growth going again. Madam Speaker, what's the last number? 3.4% GDP growth? That's not my favorite metric, Madam Speaker, but it is a metric that people utilize to indicate whether the economy is moving. Yes, we have inflationary pressures. We have a lot of issues around that, and we have issues with traffic, but we have been doing a lot. The Minister for Tourism has been busy getting us back to or exceeding 2019 numbers at this point. So, Madam Speaker, I reject comments about the government has been dithering and doing nothing. I reject that. And Madam Speaker, coming back to the East, the people of Northside, the people of East End, the people of Bordentown West, the people of Savannah, even my constituency in Newlands, Bordentown East, Madam Speaker, they're all our brothers and sisters. And yes, they are all suffering. You've heard every single member of this House who represent those constituencies talking about the issues that they have had. The way they feel that the matters relating to traffic issues that concern them are not being addressed. But, Madam Speaker, and the member for Red Bay caused me to stand, and I apologize for my apparent anger at the time, but I do not appreciate an attempt to mislead anybody anywhere in this country on issues that I have already even spoken on. And let me repeat it again for them, I support the proper approach to dealing with the East-West arterial extension. Because I understand, I know what it was like. Savannah and Newlands had to deal with the same problems before the roads were expanded going in, where we just had one lane and one lane going each way and 2 lanes going each way. I had kids that I had to take to school too, so I understand, I know what it's like. That's why I support getting this thing done and getting it done properly. But that seems to be the problem, Madam Speaker. They want the country to believe, and they want to try to project their view into the minds of some of my colleagues that I don't support this. My colleagues no different. My colleagues have heard me pushing the issue of getting the environmental impact assessment done in order for the East-West extension to be properly completed. Because there's no other way to do it, Madam Speaker. One of the problems we have had in this country is that we have been making decisions without properly planning, without proper assessments, without forecasts, without data, without understanding where we were going. And Madam Speaker, we had the luxury of doing those types of things in the past because the margin for error was a lot greater. The problem is, as we go along, our population, when we came into office, we were told the population is 65,000. Our response was, no, that can't be. Doesn't feel that way, doesn't look that way. We came up with 71,000. There was Snickers. How you come up with that? We do a census. The census comes out and says it was just over 71,000. And then, less than a year later, we do a labor force survey, which tells us the population has grown by another 8,000, 7,000 or 8,000. Madam Speaker, one of the problems we've had is that we continue to make decisions on an ad hoc basis without properly planning and thinking through everything. And our margin for error is shrinking every single day. And the impacts on our people are growing every single day because we're not doing the necessary planning. Madam Speaker, these are my colleagues in 4 out of the 5 sitting on that side now were my colleagues 2013 to 2017. The honourable member from Red Bay was the Premier, was my leader. I supported him. He knows how much I supported him. He knows that I regard him as a friend. Every one of them too. He knows what we have been through. But he also knows my view about these things. He knows that I care about making sure that we're making the right decisions, using the right analysis, bringing in the right scientific information to ensure that we're getting the right result. And Madam Speaker, this is not something that takes 10 years. Getting an EIA done for a road that's about 10 miles long, that is going along the edge of the largest contiguous mangrove forest in the world, actually. Sorry, in the Caribbean, not the world, in the Caribbean. And there's no commitment to doing an EIA for that over all those years. Madam Speaker, I think it was 2014, I said to my colleagues then, the then Minister for Planning and NRA and everything else connected, I said, you need to do an EIA. I know that's what the result is going to be. Madam Speaker, March 3rd, 2014, my then Premier, leader, the honourable member from Red Bay, held a press conference and stated that at the time estimated $40 million 10-mile highway extension would be going through a rigorous environmental impact assessment before being given the final go-ahead. That was a statement that came from him. It's in the news, I remember. Madam Speaker, what happened since then? Nothing happened until April 2016. A year and 3 months. The Planning Ministry wrote to, at the time I was the Minister for Financial Services, Commerce and Environment. The Planning Ministry then wrote to my department and said, we don't want to do this EIA. because it has never been done before for roads in Cayman. But with all due respect, we had never done a 10-mile long road along a highly sensitive wetland area. We did build a road through the back of Bodden Town called the Anton Bodden Road. Of course, nothing was done for that. And magically, areas between that road and the coast road in Bodden Town started flooding. Yes, some of them had areas where they were wet before, temporary stuff, but people started flooding, Gun Square started flooding, houses started, furniture started floating out of people's houses in Gun Square. Is that just a coincidence? It may well be, Madam Speaker, because no proper assessment was done in relation to the Anton Bodden Road. No things like culverts to ensure that water was able, because we all know the drainage in that area comes from the south side of the island and goes towards the north. So those are some of the issues. I mean, it's more than that, it's broader than that. And those people with expertise have said that an EIA is necessary. Are we the only country that does an EIA for this kind of thing, Madam Speaker? No. Many countries do it. Jamaica does it. Belize does it. Maybe Barbados too. Bermuda does it. I don't know if they got any roads to build anymore, but they do. And Madam Speaker, there has been an abject failure to getting this done, knowing that it needed to be done. Madam Speaker, in 10 years, they probably could have done almost 10 EIAs. Or 8 years, they could have done 7.5 to 8. These things, we don't know exactly how long this one is going to take, but the current thinking is that it will be finished within 12 months. And then we'll be able to move on to completing that road. That road that is necessary to allow our friends, our brothers and sisters, our family to move easily, more easily, quicker from the eastern districts, to provide an emergency access way if the island is hit, God forbid, and the coast road is heavily damaged. Or it doesn't have to be a hurricane, it doesn't have to be anything other than a traffic accident. I've been stuck in it. I've had to turn around and go and sleep in Frank Sound because there was a big crash in Pease Bay I couldn't get down. Thank God I had some place to go to sleep. So I understand these issues, and I understand when my colleagues are saying, we got to get this done for our people, we got to get this done for our people, and I say, yes, so let's get the EIA done and get this thing moving. Madam Speaker, between 20 I think it was 2016. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Madam Speaker, the point is, they have not, the government did not do the EIA. The government that I was a part of didn't do it, even though I was asking that, and indicating that it needed to be done. The administration following that didn't get it done. Madam Speaker, my friend, the member from Red Bay, talks about our friendship, and I guarantee him that that friendship is intact, despite everything else, despite the fact that I have broken a couple of eggs here this afternoon because I know how to make omelets too. But I want him to know that I genuinely, and he knows this. When he got his KCMG, who issued a statement lauding him and pointing out his public contribution to this country? No. I'm not letting you quietly get away with the things you said. It's because you didn't do what you needed to do that the road has not been started yet. That's what the problem is. Yeah. You'll see it. You'll see it. What you'll see is it being done properly. Madam Speaker, year and 3 months, 2.5 years, a year and a half, all these big chunks of time periods, lapsing, expiring, passing by, before there's further interaction to discuss the EIA from the ministry responsible during that administration. Madam Speaker, that is what you call dithering. That's what you call recognizing that there's a problem and ignoring the solution by trying to keep coming back with your fingers crossed, hoping that you don't have to do something that's only going to take 12 months to do, and you just have to commit to doing it and get it done. Now, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, I have been pushing, I have been writing, not only people in NRA, but even my own team, my own ministry people, because I say to them, you know what? If we don't push and make sure this is getting done, and I'm not blaming the minister, but if we don't push and make sure this gets done, if you don't go over and above, go beyond your job, you know who's going to get the blame? It isn't going to be anybody else but the typical target. It's going to be DOE. It's going to be the NCC. Always the case. So, Madam Speaker, for all them years, they didn't get anything done. But now, that process, that EIA process, is underway. It is making progress. It is moving forward. We will have answers. But you know what, Madam Speaker? The EIA doesn't tell you whether to do something or not to do something. The EIA tells you how best to mitigate the impacts, how to make sure that you do it, which doesn't end up in long-term consequences that it costs more money to address, or you may not be able to address it all. People just have to suck it up and live with it. Madam Speaker, that's what an EIA does. And that's what we are going to get finished. 8 years, there was a recognition of this issue from that side. And in a year and a half, we are going to be finishing that EIA because it's well underway. A lot further on than that side ever accomplished, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I talked about the consequences and the long-term impacts. I started off saying that this was an afternoon of contradictions. I mean, let me start with some apparent ones. The deputy leader I have heard this afternoon and other times in this Honourable House get up and laud the minister for following his plan and tell him what a good job he's been doing building the roads that he had lined up, he had started, but I'm not sure what it is. But the point is, you're lauding him, you're telling him he's doing a good job following your plan. Now you come back for political convenience and you're saying you're not doing nothing. You're doing everything for everybody else. You got to make up your mind. The member for Red Bay has to make up his mind. You can't just say he's doing nothing. Yeah. But, Madam Speaker, here are some of the challenges. The member for Red Bay talks about where we have come from and the things we've had to face over the years and decades. Yes, he's right. He's right. That's where we've come from. But remember also what I pointed out earlier, is our window, our margin of error is fast shrinking. And that's why we're having all these challenges escalating and accumulating. So while there was a time when it was okay to fill this land in and to do this and that, it was okay to go and shoot grunts out of a pipe. I hope you could shoot them somewhere else besides out of a pipe. But exactly. That's like shooting fish in a barrel, I believe they call it. Madam Speaker, that represents a perspective that is nostalgic, that is, you know, yeah, we used to do this. That's what happened with the traffic. You know what happened with the traffic at Pirates Week? Yes, we had these 16 accidents. But they said to me, sir, we close the same roads we always close for Pirates Week. The problem is, this is not the same Cayman. It's not the same Cayman. It's thousands more cars, miles more cars, Madam Speaker. That's why there is a challenge that we have to work together on. There is a challenge that this government is confronting and looking to solve through innovation, through proper planning, through making the difficult decisions. We have other things on our agenda that we're trying to do that are, again, they'll say a continuation of their efforts. But they don't, because a couple of people start hollering about this and that, they want it stopped then, they want it pulled back then. They wouldn't have been pulling it back, Madam Speaker, because they know, they agree that there are things we have to do for this country. The member from Red Bay pointed out, we have all these people that are here that are not Caymanians. How are we going to know the difference between them unless we have proper ID? Anyway, that's another subject. Madam Speaker, my point that I want to finalize and wind up on is this. We have got to follow proper planning. We have got to make decisions which represent the best long-term interest of the country. We can't look back and be nostalgic and talk about how we did something before and expect, just like with the traffic with Pirates Week, if we do it again, we're going to have a different result other than a worse problem, bigger chaos, more inconvenience, a lower quality of life for our people. Madam Speaker, these are the kinds of challenges that we face. And while this report contains some good ideas, good suggestions, those suggestions, those ideas are already reflected in the plans which the ministry, but it's obviously a cross-ministry approach that's required. It's not just roads. We're not just building roads, because everybody acknowledges and recognizes that this isn't about building roads and building ourselves out of a problem. We live on an island. We can't just build roads. We have to have the holistic solution that others have talked about. And yes, we know what it means. Madam Speaker, we have to plan properly in this country. We have to make the right decisions because we don't have any other choice. If we don't do it properly, we are going to majorly impact our people's quality of lives and even the economy, because if people can't get around here, they can't get to their jobs, then that has a major impact. We lost productivity. We lose economic value. Costs go up. We don't need any more of those. Madam Speaker, the Minister for Tourism is pushing forward with the plan around public transport. That is a major part of the solution. But yes, we have to do all the things that the member from Georgetown North referred to, in terms of encouraging people to carpool. Because I know I drive down in the mornings and I look across to see how many people are in the car. I have 2 people in my car. I just look across just to see how many people. On probably 80% of the cars have 1 person in them. Remember what I said? You line up all these cars, you get miles of cars, 1 per every 15 feet. So we have to confront all of the issues, Madam Speaker. Some of them will include restrictions on importations. Some of them will include making sure that people are carpooling. Some of them will require that we have, a large part of it will require that we have good, reliable public transport. Low emission or no emission public transport in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think I have gotten whatever vexed me out of my system now. So I thank you very much for the patience of this House in listening to my contribution.
Colleagues, I think this is probably a good time for us to suspend for an evening dinner break. We will resume at 7. Okay, we will change the return time to 6:30.